A very good morning and welcome to this 11th week session where we are talking about HRD and its implications on organizational learning, and then how HRD can help or facilitate an organization to become learning organizations. And in this process, what we discussed so far is that what is organizational learning and how it can be linked with what you call HRD processes, right. Now, what we are going to discuss next is that what is the process of organizational learning, that how organizations learn. Okay. And here we are going to discuss some of the issues related to organizational learning, and then further we will discuss that how organizations learning is facilitated by various factors, and then we will see what are the various outcomes. Now, to start with, first of all what we are going to talk about is that how organizational learning takes place, and here we are going to discuss a model related to what you call organizational learning process. Now, if you look at this roadmap, so if you look at the various constructs and processes that we are talking about is it includes say knowledge acquisition. It means this is related to how organizations acquire knowledge. Okay. And when we are talking about knowledge acquisition, it means that we have to look at some of the sub processes related to this process, and some of the processes are what you call sub processes which could be related with knowledge acquisition is that congenital learning, that how we are going to use so relationship between knowledge and something that is to be done, and then we go for experiential learning, that how we are going to use our experiences that we have gained while doing certain things, and the kind of knowledge that is acquired by us, and the kind of a skill that we have been using for conducting our work. So, whatever experiences that we have gained over a period of time as a part of doing a job or performing a job also becomes a process, you can say a sub process for acquiring knowledge, and because we learn from our mistakes, for example, we learn through trial and error methods, right. So, this is all part of the experiential learning. Okay. Then is the vicarious learning. Vicarious learning is something where you are going to learn through others, right. You look at others what they are doing and then you try to do it. And then grafting. Grafting is a concept which is used to see that how things are being done by others, and then visualizing that, okay, so that you can do it. Now, if you look at how these kind of things are done. So, basically if you look at the first point related to knowledge acquisition, like organizations go for experimentation. Okay. Say for example, they go for see that whether if they are going to offer a new product, whether it is going to be successful or not, if they are going to change certain processes, whether it is going to be successful or not, and based on the learning they are going to see that whatever knowledge has been acquired, how it can be used further. Then they try to evaluate themselves. Organization self appraisal, it means that they are going to look at themselves, that how well they are doing. Okay. And based on the knowledge and experience that they have got through their self appraisal in terms of their performance, their growth, okay, their reputation, all kind of things. So, they try to evaluate, because when you are going to evaluate organizations, the process that we adopt is going to be different. It may not be same as individual appraisal, because the parameters that you are going to use could be related to financial related parameters, and similarly it could be related to non financial parameters like goodwill, reputation, brand image, right. So, these could be non financial parameters, then market growth, market share, performance, profits, this could be what you call financial measures. So, we can go for this kind of financial measures also to evaluate and find out how well the organization is progressing, whether learning is happening or not, and whether this learning is resulted in certain outcomes or not. Similarly, you also say that the kind of learning that happens sometimes it is ad hoc, not very systematic. You learn through random processes, or you go through systematic learning, where HRD is going to help you through various interventions. They are going to people are going to learn through structured experiences, okay, and a systematic experience, and that is what we call systematic learning, right. Coming to the next point, that is after knowledge is acquired, the another process that is used is, that is what we call information distribution, that how information is distributed, is passed on to the people. So, what kind of systems, networks and these kind of things have, what kind of cognitive map that you have developed, right, what kind of media that you are using. So, media how you are going to search and notice various information that is coming up, right. So, this is again related to the same processes that we have. You try to look at those processes and see, and you try to evaluate it and see whether whether you are able to learn it or not. Then information interpretation, that how the information is being evaluated by the people. It depends upon certain characteristics of the information, what are the source of information, how good or bad this is, right. Whether you are receiving a lot of information or you are receiving only relevant information, that is another important fact. The statement is related to what you call overload, whether you are being overloaded with lot of information and then you are not able to interpret them well within the time that is required to be interpreted. Then whether you are really are learning, because if you are going to have lot of information, so how the earlier information is going to what you call prohibit you to learn new things. So, what is the unlearning process that is happening, okay? Because since you are getting lot of information. So, when you are going to update and archive the information in your say mind, then it may be possible that you will not be able to restore all the information that is with you. So, you have to discard certain information which may not be relevant. So, what is the process of unlearning and these kind of things. So, the process that is, takes place is basically once you receive the information, you go for rehearsal and then you try to put it somewhere in your memory, either in short term memory or in the long term memory, and whenever it is required you go for scanning of that information. Okay. And when you are going to focus, scan that information, then you go for focused search. Focused search means that you look for information in a particular place or in a file and somewhere. Okay. Similarly, when the information is archived in your mind, that is where also you will find that okay, so if the information is say stored in a very systematic manner, then you will be able to scan and find that information. Okay. That is going to help you to perform well. And then finally, you have organizational memory. Okay. Organizational memory basically is storing and retrieving information from the organization. For example, if you have a knowledge management system, so that can help you to get information from the archive of the knowledge base, like databases of the organization, that is also part of the organization. Okay. So, there could be lot of things that can help you to see that how you are going to learn. Okay. So, as a part of organizational learning process, you try to acquire, organizations try to acquire more and more knowledge through various activities. Okay. They try to pass on information and see that people are going to use it. Okay. Now, it is up to people that how are going to interpret and evaluate that information. It depends upon number of factors that we have discussed. And finally, you are also going to see that organization has databases, knowledge management systems, because it is going to help them to do their job effectively, right. So, once we have discussed this roadmap of organizational learning, we move further to discuss some other things related to organizational memory, right. Now, if you look at this, here we are going to talk about 4 different elements of organizational learning, okay, which are going to facilitate the process of learning by the organization. Okay. One thing that you should remember, that we have moved away from individual learning to organizational learning. So, here we are talking about organization as a whole, that how organizations are going to learn these things, though it could be collective learning, summing up all the learning that happens within the individual, but that has to be facilitated by certain factors to take place. Okay. And if you look at this, the most important factor is supportive leadership. Okay. Whether leaders are committed to this kind of activity or not, okay. Whether leaders have very clear vision and goal of organizational learning, okay. Do they create champions and models, role models, okay. Okay, this is the person who has done a lot of things, okay, who could be followed, right. Then organization should also follow a culture of continuous improvement. What does it mean? It means you should try to create a value or a culture which leads to organizational learning. Basically, here we are talking about a kind of culture which motivates people to go for more innovation and creativity, and that is where we are talking about a culture which creates what you call or is oriented towards entrepreneurial activities, okay. And that is why we call it is called entrepreneurial culture, right. So, entrepreneurial culture basically helps people to go for continuous improvement of products, processes and systems, right. And this kind of culture has to be linked with what you call reinforcements, right. So, if somebody is doing something and out of which something is coming out, they are creating some kind of intellectual property, say for example, then he must be rewarded, whether it is individual or team must be rewarded suitably. And then you have to see that what he has done, and accordingly you decide about the reward, and you would also need to develop a structure and system for rewarding people for being innovative and creative, which is leading to what you call changes in the behavior of performance and further changes in which is coming out as a result of this, leading to what you call improved performance, productivity, bringing about a change in the product, system, structure, processes, these kind of things. So, this is very important. For example, you will find some companies are there who try to take even risks. So, they have created a risk taking culture in the organization. You must have heard say about 3M. Okay. 3M, you know, that is the top of the innovation index. So, if you look at this example of 3M, you will find that 3M is one of the most innovative companies. Okay. So, they have created a culture of continuous improvement, that is why you will find that highest number of patents are there in their name. So, a company like 3M basically promotes a risk taking culture. So, where failures are equally celebrated, okay, which not many organizations will do. So, if you are going to create this kind of culture and have align the values and belief of the organization with the individual goals and expectations, and so that they go for these kind of things, they are motivated enough and they know that even if they fail, nothing is going to happen, then they again go for experimentation and these kind of things, as we have discussed earlier, to create value for the organization in terms of products, processes and these kind of things. And that is why the kind of intellectual property that is created through this culture of continuous improvement, 3M is one of the best companies, and you can find them at the top of the innovation index, right. Then in addition to these two processes, you also need to look at another important process, that is intuitive knowledge processes. Okay. Since organizational learning processes are part of the regular things that is happening in the organization, which basically embedded in the systems, structure, culture, processes and these kind of things. So, you have to see that how people are going to use this to learn. Okay. And then you go for look at the culture, you see that how this could be used. Okay. And then you are also creating a knowledge sharing culture in the organization. So, that you have a facilitative systems through which people are going to share the strategic knowledge with other people, which leads to better performance. Okay. And you can also use technology platforms, because you can use blogs, portals, okay, internets, okay, intranet, all kind of things, seminars, workshops, conferences. Okay. Through e-learning, you can also go for this kind of things, through which you can share the knowledge that is there with you, which is basically tacit in nature, because that is in the mind, and that is why we call it intuitive knowledge process. So, you also need to capture the intuitive knowledge that lies with the people, so that it could be used, and for that you need to facilitate a culture where people are ready to share the knowledge, and it should be part of the culture itself, right. Then moving to the fourth quadrant, that is defining learning structures. Okay. So, you have to see that what kind of structure an organization has. Okay. You know that when we are talking about the structure, it basically more planned and systematic, in the sense that roles and responsibilities of people are defined very well, right. Basically, if you look at the structure of an organization, it talks about reporting relationship. Okay. Across levels, okay, both horizontally and vertically, and then you need to develop a system of coordination of and integration of activities across levels and roles, so that people can coordinate their activity, they can integrate that activities for better performance, right. So, the idea is that you use networks and coordinations in the structure to facilitate effective performance, and then you make sure that these roles and responsibilities are facilitating the kind of knowledge sharing that is expected from the people. It means that being a senior, you are going to support your subordinates, and you are going to share knowledge and experiences, so that he is going to help you. And this kind of activity has to be not only vertically, but horizontally, and that is why you need to create a network within the structure, so that people are going to share their knowledge with everybody to create something that is going to help the organization for continuous improvement, right. So, these are the four very important elements of organizational learning, and now we are going to move further to discuss some other issues. So, look at the kind of framework that is being used by the organization. Okay. So, it depends upon, if you look at organizational learning, that is a part of what you call organizational learning framework, which it depends upon the characteristics of the organization that we have just talked about in terms of what kind of a structure it has, what kind of IT systems it has, information systems, what is the culture, leadership, what kind of HR practices. So, these factors actually facilitate the learning process of the organization, right. And then organization engages in these kind of processes, especially related to what we call discovery, invention, production and generalization, which is basically a part of what we call knowledge management system, right. Which could be in two forms. It could be tacit, which is in the mind of the people, okay, which can come out through intuition, knowledge sharing, collaborations linked with the reward, and then something that is explicit, where you try to develop a mechanism to ensure that the tacit knowledge is transformed into explicit knowledge. And if you are able to transform the tacit knowledge into explicit, it means that this knowledge is available in the archive of the organization, and you have created a technology based in platform, so that people can share explicit knowledge in the form of say manuals, guidelines, books. Okay. And the most important thing is that you need to have a group or team which is going to be responsible to ensure that whatever learning is happening is being captured, okay, which is there in the form of intuition or tacit, so that it could be made explicit, right. And if you are able to do that, probably you need to adopt a strategy, okay, to ensure that this kind of knowledge that is captured by you, okay, which is basically an outcome of the learning process supported by organizational characteristics, leads to better organizational performance, right. So, you accordingly you need to ensure what kind of a strategy you are going to adopt. It depends upon what kind of knowledge base that you have created, right, through the learning process. Now, moving further, we will discuss some other issues related to this one. Okay. So, the idea is to that first you have to focus on systems and processes, right, that what kind of IT activities that you have, what kind of information processing system you have developed related to acquisition of information, how it is being distributed, how it is interpreted by the people, and whether it is being archived in the organizational memory or not, right. In organizational memory, which forms basically databases and other archives, okay, where the this kind of information is available. Apart from focus on systems and processes, we also move to see that what kind of system an organization has. Okay. So, basically we talk about two kind of system, closed system and open system. Closed system is a kind of system you can say which does not receive any input from outside and does not give any output to the outside world, to the environment. Okay. So, most of the organizations are not closed system for that matter, they are defined as an open systems. If you look at the systems approach, it says that you are receiving input from the external environment, this input is processed by the organization, okay, and then this after this processes transformation that happens within the organization, whatever outcome is there in terms of products and services, then again exported back to the organization. So, you develop a system which is more open system, and that is why we call organizations an open system. So, what you have here is input, okay, and there could be various kind of input, say raw material, machine, people, all kind of things, and then this transformation happens. Okay. Vertical, this is a process. Okay. This transformation happens within the organization. Okay. What organization does that based on this input, it is going to process them using management processes, a lot of management processes, right. It could be related to maintenance, it could be related to feedback, related to production, okay, all kind of things. Okay. So, you might have a production system, you have a maintenance system and all kind of systems, which is a part of the organization. So, this is the organization where this transformation happens. So, you are going to process the input and then you have an output. And if you look at this output, it could be in terms of what you call products and services. Okay. Output could be a process also. Okay. Suppose you have changed your processes. Okay. So, that is also an outcome of various activities that happens. So, organizational learning happens because you have looked at the input part, okay, and then you are going to see that how this input is going to be used effectively and how people are going to make use of this input in effective way using certain management processes to come out with an output. Okay. So, when we are going to use organization as a system, this is always called an open system, right. An organization cannot be a closed system, and this kind of system is known as open system, where you receive input, transform it or process it, and then you have an output. Now, based on see some of the characteristics of an open system is that since it is a cycle, so again this goes back to this one. Okay. So, you have a feedback system here, okay, right. So, you get feedback on a regular basis, and accordingly you try to revise and create new inputs for transformation, and this cycle goes on, right. This is basically the open system approach. Okay. This kind of system basically helps you to adapt to the environment. Okay. You are going to learn from the people, because based on the feedback you are going to see what is to be done, and then that is how with this kind of output basically you are going to contribute to the society in terms of offering products and services to them, right. And then that is how we are going to also relate with inter-organizational relationship within the organization, how things are going to be coordinated activities. For that you have systems, structure, processes, culture, leadership, which could be part of what you call the management process. So, it might have a structure, it might have a system for production, okay. It might be adopting certain business processes, you might having a culture, it could be enablers actually, then you might have a leadership system, right. So, all this is part of the organizational processes, which basically culminates in better outputs in form of products and services, right. The only problem is that if you are going to use open system, you have to see that you have a regular feedback to bring about a changes in the products and services, and that is where you will be learning organization. Otherwise, what happens if you are going to continue with the cycle without any feedback loop, probably you are lacking in innovation and creativity. But if you use feedback system to revise and alter your inputs based on the information that you have got about the products and services, so that you can change not only the input, but you also reorganize your systems, processes and these kind of things in order to produce better products and services, right. So, that is why we use organization as a system. And then we move that one very important thing is that you have to see that if you really want an organization to learn, and make sure that you are going to develop a culture which is going to be aligned with these kind of things. Okay. Culture basically comes from the top management. You have to see that what kind of philosophy organization adopts or the management adopts in terms of its values, norms, beliefs that you have. It could be related to the rituals, it could be related to certain things which organization does, and what kind of risk taking activity it has, what is the philosophy of the organization. Okay. You might have heard stories about the organizations, that how people reach to the top. Okay. So, you all try to create a value systems, norms or standards for behaviors, okay, and certain belief systems, which is a part of the culture. Okay. And make sure that this culture is going to influence the attitude of the behavior of the workers for better performance, right. And that is where you are going to create team culture. It means that you also try to see that people are going to work in the team. So, culture is an enabler. I will give a very good example related to the culture, where an organization has gone for transformation of the culture to improve its product and performance. Few years back, State Bank of India went for a cultural transformation. So, they try to bring about certain changes in the culture of the norms, value systems and beliefs of the organization, right, which has culminated into better performance, and because of that actually the attitude and the value system of the people have changed, which has resulted in that is what you call better performance of the employees, right. So, culture actually helps you to transform your behavior, your attitude, and then it leads to better performance, and that is why you also need to focus on culture. And then from culture you also need to focus on creating a knowledge management system. Okay. So, when we are going to talk about a knowledge management system, you have to see what is the process of knowledge acquisition, okay, how the knowledge is being disseminated, passed on to the people, how the knowledge is evaluated, refined, because some knowledge on a particular topic is available, but when new knowledge come up, how we are going to embed or integrate that kind of knowledge. Okay. Then how the knowledge is created and used. So, you have a kind of cycle, knowledge management cycle, which could be used, and then knowledge could be available in two forms, tacit forms, which could be more intuitive in the mind of the people, or explicit. So, the idea is that the organization should try to create a knowledge base, okay, by transforming this tacit knowledge into explicit form through collaborations, through socializations or other processes, so that you create a knowledge management archive in the organization, and then you have an IT based technology which is going to enable in the process of dissemination and use of the knowledge by the people. So, knowledge management and other activities which could be taken up along with organizational learning processes, because it is going to facilitate to use of knowledge or learning that is created by the people, so that people can perform effectively. So, we have discussed some of the issues related to this, and then finally, we are going to talk about continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is very important, because what for organizations are going to learn. Okay? Once you are going to evaluate yourself that yes, people are learning, you have created systems and enablers, make sure that things are improving. Okay? And that is where you are trying to become a learning organizations as an outcome of being having a good learning systems, right. So, if you have a good learning systems, it will help you to restructure your systems, processes, you move towards what you call total quality management, okay, try to bring on quality in everything, you try to adapt and change yourself in terms of attitude, behavior, processes and technologies, right. So, gradually you evaluate to become better and better, right. But this is not going to provide a good insight, provided a good insight provided you do not remain creative. Okay. It means that you need to go for this kind of things on a regular basis. Okay. So, you also need to create a feedback system to get and evaluate what you are doing, and accordingly bringing about a change in your systems and processes, so that you remain try to be creative and innovative on a regular basis, and that is how you are going to perform well. Okay. So, these are some of the things that we have been talking about, and then definitely you have to focus on innovation. Okay. Because if you do not innovate, then probably you are not going to survive in the next decade, okay, even if you are doing very well. So, and for the innovations, basically in order to compete, you have to see that how you are going to be more and more adaptive. Okay. And in order to adapt, you basically you have to come out with new products, because you know the product cycle life, the age of the product life cycle has come down. So, offer new services, come out with new technology. Okay. So, you need to be revolutionary, you do not need to follow the path of others, but you need to create a path which where others are going to follow you. So, and that is where you are going for quantum leaps. If you look at some of the examples which will give you an idea that how things have changed, right. You can see an iPad and okay, and these kind of instruments which are basically are helping the organizations to reach towards better profits, and that is how they have been able to achieve better competitive advantage, right. So, we have been discussing on these issues, and then you know that organizations are very adaptive systems, and that is where you have to see that what kind of decision making is happening through individual, group and the organizational level, okay, and how the behavior is changing through the interactions process of the people, and whether organizations have been trying to be adaptive, so that the kind of knowledge that is generated and created, whether it is being tested, evaluated and shared by the people or not. So, you need to create a system, a structure and process through which you will find that people are trying to adapt to the changes that is happening, and whatever knowledge base is being created, it is being used and shared by the people, whether it is available in tacit form or explicit form, right. And that is where ICT comes to your help, because it is going to support your learning process in terms of delivery, storage and use. So, it becomes a enabler, okay. And then ultimately you are going to measure learning. Okay. So, you have to see that how much learning has happened, what kind of benchmark best practices you have created, okay, and whether you are moving towards becoming a learning organization or not. Okay. So, some of the examples that is taken here from architectural engineering construction industry in Hong Kong and China, and they have adopted these practices and tried to move forward, okay, to become learning organizations. Thank you very much.